up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about something that probably a lot of people are like, oh snap, don't get into this. But that is about a Super Bowl. Let's get it started. So welcome in, everybody, to another video. In today's video, we're going to be talking about why the Lions may actually be closer to a Super Bowl appearance than you think. Now, I may do a part 2 to this video because there is a lot that goes into this. I mean, one, there are stats and numbers to look at, which is going to be more of today's video. And then on the other end of things, there's things that you got to look at, like on the field. You know, players that we brought in. Did we improve at certain positions? Where do we need to improve this offseason? What were our struggles? All of that stuff, film, that can be a part 2 to this video if you guys want to see it. So I'm going to put part 1 at the end of this video. I'm actually going to write that down now. I'm going to put part 1 at the end of this video, and if you guys want to see a part 2 to it, let me know. But today, we are specifically looking at a lot of numbers here, and I wanted to figure out how close the Detroit Lions actually were to being a Super Bowl team. I mean, I know it sounds crazy because we've never been there. We've only won one playoff game in the Super Bowl era, but hey, why not? Why not set the bar super, super high? Why does that have to affect next year? Why does any of that have anything to do with next year? Because at some point, every team didn't make the Super Bowl, but then all of a sudden they did. And once they did, that was no longer a thing. So why not set our bar at the very highest and say, hey, let's not just be a team that's competitive at the end of the year. Let's be a team that's in the Super Bowl at the end of the year. So that is what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Now, obviously, a lot of things have to go right, but the question is, how close are the Detroit Lions to being a Super Bowl team? And today, we're going to be answering that question with statistics. Wow, that word got me. Statistics. We're going to be answering that question with stats. So the one thing that I wanted to do is, first off, make sure that, hey, there's multiple ways to win a Super Bowl, because I've said it before, and yes, it is true. There are multiple ways to win a Super Bowl in the NFL. I mean, you can win a Super Bowl in a lot of different ways by being good at a lot of different things. The thing is, you just have to have your own team identity, and you have to, utilize whatever that team identity is and use it at a high, efficient rate, whatever that is, okay? Some teams are not great defensively, a yards allowed, but they barely give up any points. They force a lot of turnovers, and they get a lot of pressure, okay? Maybe that's kind of like, hey, that's our calling card defensively. Every team seems to have an identity. Some teams are super, super good on offense, but on defense, man, they may be the best team in the league at stopping the run. It's always something, but you still do have to have some parts of both sides. You can't just have a great offense and a complete trash defense, and win a Super Bowl, it usually doesn't happen, or the other way around. You can't have one of the best defenses in the league. We saw that last year with the Patriots, and even an offense that wasn't trash but not the best, and win a Super Bowl. Offense is super important, and you need a little bit of every part. However, you don't need to be great at everything. You need to have a little bit of a running game. You may need to have some defense. You may need to have some offense, right? You need something, I've seen in averages, and this was back in 2013, that, like 6 straight Super Bowl teams were all averaged in the top 10 offense and defense, but you can have a little bit of a mix of different things. So now that we know that any team can really make it to the Super Bowl with their own identity, okay, how are the Detroit Lions going to become a Super Bowl team from what we've seen so far with Matt Patricia as their head coach? Because that's the thing I want to focus on. I want to focus on Matt Patricia being the Detroit Lions head coach, because that's who it is right now and what he's done before. So what I want to do is, hey, let's go look back and see when Matt Patricia last won a Super Bowl. Now, he was not the head coach this year, but he was the defense coordinator. And with the Detroit Lions, we look at him as the guy for the defensive side of the ball, and kind of Darrell Bevell as the offensive guy. So in today's video, we're going to be looking at Matt Patricia's last Super Bowl win, and that came in 2017. Actually, that's not that long ago. They also won 2018, but he wasn't there. 2017, which was the Patriots' last Super Bowl win with Matt Patricia as their defensive coordinator. And when you look at the stats, it may be pretty shocking, and they're probably gonna be like, "Oh, that's not a good sign." But hey, they won the Super Bowl that way, so maybe we can follow in those footsteps. So let's take a look at some of the stats from that 2017 Super Bowl Patriots team. Okay, this was the team that came back against Atlanta, just to jog your memory, from 28-3 down and won this game in overtime. All right, that was this team. So let's talk about this Super Bowl team from the New England Patriots in 2017. Let's start off on the offensive side of the ball, shall we? Well, their offense, I will say, was pretty good. Their offense was pretty darn good, okay? They were second in points. They were first in total yards. They were second in passing yards, and they were 10th in rushing yards and 11th in yards per attempt. I like to throw the yards per attempt in there because I think it's a really good stat to use. But as you can see, top 10 in every single stat, and top 2 in points, yards, and passing yards. Okay, yeah, that's a pretty good offense. So we talked about how important it is to have passing yards and to stop the pass defensively. So yeah, that's a darn good offense. So maybe the defense doesn't have to be that great. Maybe Matt Patricia's defense doesn't have to be too great. Well, It really wasn't. Their defense wasn't that great. However, they did just a few things well. They did a few things well enough, and it was able to kind of vault them to a Super Bowl. Because if they were trash at everything, probably wouldn't have got there. But they weren't good at everything. I mean, they were pretty much bad at everything except for a few things. So they were 5th in points allowed defensively. 5th in points allowed defensively, that's good. That's really good. That's a lot of teams who take that. However, here's kind of where the bend, don't break kind of strategy comes into play, because it's not just something that we say, it's something that we've seen. Bend, don't break. 29th in total yards allowed, 30th in passing yards allowed, and 20th in rushing defense. 28th in turnovers. Okay, so you could say the defense wasn't very good, but what they didn't do was allow a lot of points. Only 5th in points allowed, and they were 8th in the league in sacks with 42. So those were their two things, right? They could get some pressure, they could get some sacks, and they could stop teams, right? They can move the ball, you can throw it all the way down the field if you want, but we're not going to give up touchdowns. And that's something that Matt Patricia always talks about, and as you can see here, statistically, that pans out. So the defense wasn't even that good. I mean, it was pretty much trash. Those are like last year's stats for the most part defensively. Now, what I like to do is look at the Lions defense from 2018, and we can look at it from 2019, but it's pretty darn bad. And actually, it kind of does compare to the offense. It kind of does compare to the defense that the Patriots put out, but the one problem is we were 26th in points allowed, they were 5th. And that is the one problem. But if you look at the Lions' 2018 offense, they were 16th in points allowed, 10th in yards allowed, 8th in passing defense, 10th in rushing defense, and 31st turnovers, so low in turnovers like the Patriots were. So the only thing that the Lions defense in 2018 was worse at statistically than the Patriots is points allowed. They were middle of the pack. But everything else, they were better at. So when I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, so I guess we don't need to have the best defense across the board. We just need to be good at a couple of things, and that is where Matt Patricia's philosophy comes in. And since Matt Patricia's our coach, we need to look at it and say, okay, let's be that team then. We may not have the best defense in the league. I would love it. I would love to have that, and I'm sure he would as well. But points allowed is huge. That is the one spot that we need to focus on. And if we do a part 2 to this video, we probably will focus on points allowed, because that's a very important part of Matt Patricia's defense. I am throwing things around right now. So how we know the defense doesn't have to be great? Well, how are the Lions close then? I mean, you just heard those offensive stats. You're probably like, bro, did you look at our offensive stats? Like, yeah, our offense was good, but it wasn't that good. But there are some hypotheticals that you can look at with our offense. And that is if Matthew Stafford kept the same averages that he did when he was healthy. Yes, if Matthew Stafford would have put up the stats that he put up in the first 8 games, in the second 8 games, which obviously we know isn't going to be perfect, but let's just say, for example, he did, our stats would have been really, really good and almost comparable to that Patriots offense. I'm serious. Okay, so before we put Matthew Stafford back into the mix for the second half of the season, let's just take a look at what our stats were, when he wasn't healthy. 19th in points, we were 19th in scoring, which isn't bad. We were 19th in scoring. We were 17th in yards and total yards. So we weren't bad. I mean, we were kind of middle of the pack, 3,900 passing yards, which ended up being, I didn't even write these down, 10th in passing yards. Again, that's not bad, and Stafford didn't even play for half the season, right? So not bad statistically. That's pretty solid. However, if you throw Matthew Stafford back in the mix, you say Stafford put the exact same numbers that you put up in the first half in the second half of the season. And now let's see where you rank, right? Let's see what the Lions rank. Now, obviously, this is going to be a little mixed up because, hey, he probably wouldn't put up the exact same stats. We don't know. Maybe it would be better. Maybe they would have been worse. I'm not sure. However, if you do it just for a hypothetical situation, just to maybe give you a little bit of confidence, if you did that, the Detroit Lions would have finished then 8th in points. The Detroit Lions would have finished 8th in points. And the reason I say they would have finished 8th in points because in their first 8 games, they averaged 25.5 points per game. 25.5, which is 204 total points. So again, if you do 204 plus 204, you get 408. So Lions would have scored 408 points on the season, 408, which would have put them in the 8th spot in points for. So they would have went from 341 to 408 if Matthew Stafford was healthy, and the stats would have stayed the same because our offense took a dip. I mean, it wasn't like our offense was the same when Matthew Stafford was gone. It took a big dip. In passing yards, it took a gigantic dip. I mean, think about this for a second. When Stafford was healthy, we know he had 2,499 passing yards. I still can't get over that. 2,499, 312 yards passing game, which would have been first in the league. That's really good, okay? That's really good, 2,499. Matthew Stafford went down. Our total yards ended up being 3,900. So that means Matthew Stafford down. In 8 games, the Lions passed for 1,400 yards. That's basically 1,100 less passing yards. You dropped 1,100 passing yards from what your average was. So if the Lions would have kept on that pace, they would have ended up being, let's say, first. They would have ended up being first in passing yards. Okay, hey, that sounds a little bit similar to the Patriots because the Patriots were second in passing yards. Okay. How about total yards? Well, if you take the Lions and you take Matthew Stafford and you add those 1,100 yards to what the Lions' total yards would have been, what they were at the end of the season, you would have ended up being second in total yards. Okay, so hey, the stats are very comparable. The only thing that's not offensively is the rushing attack, where you finished 21st in rushing yards, 4.1 yards per carry. So the only thing that you didn't have that the Patriots had in that 2017 offensive season is the rushing attack, because they finished 10th. Not bad, 11th in yards per attempt, 10th. We finished 21st. So, about 10, 11 spots lower than the Patriots did. But across the board, if Matthew Stafford hypothetically was healthy, maybe we wouldn't have ended up exactly like this. It could have been better, could have been worse. We don't know. But if you just go by what we know, the Lions' offense would have been really, really darn good. And we knew it was good. It would have been really good. So what did the Lions do to fix these problems this offseason? We're going to get into a little bit today, but more in another part too, if you guys want to see it. Well, the rushing attack is the one part the Lions need to improve upon. And what did the Lions do this offseason? Focus on fixing the rushing attack. And I think it surprised some of us at first, but as I'm looking back, I'm looking at Bob Quinn saying, Quinn, you're a smart man, my guy. You are a smart man. The Lions went out and brought offensive linemen known for blocking. They had to replace their guys anyways, so they brought in guys on the offensive line that are known for blocking. All right, you have your 2 blocking tight ends, who that's all they did last season. You're trying to establish a run game. You've been trying to do it forever. You have a fullback, and now you bring in DeAndre Swift and Jason Huntley. Okay, so you're trying to fix the run game. I get it. Okay, I get it. You tried to run the ball out last season. It was okay, but you're trying to fix that, because if you look at what you would have been with Stafford, you're telling me that, hey, this team could have been really, really good offensively. Now, defensively, the one spot that we need to improve upon last year, honestly, even last year's stats are somewhat comparable to that defense, except for points allowed. One point I do want to point out, though, like I said, 2 things that the Patriots defense did well is not allow points, and they were 8th in sacks with 42. The Lions in 2018 actually had 43 sacks. Thought I would just throw that at you. But even looking at 2019 stats, what the Lions really lack compared to that Patriots Super Bowl team is points allowed. The Lions need to be more of a bend don't break type of team. They were a little bit better than your yards allowed, I guess. They were 26th in points allowed, which is a little bit better than the 31st in total yards allowed. It still needs to be way better. It needs to be way better in points allowed. And, the Patriots didn't have a lot of turnovers either. So it's not the turnovers that got them there. The sacks definitely helped. It can throw, teams out of field goal range or whatnot. But really what the Lions need to do is overall have guys that can close drives, okay? Have guys on third down that can step up and make plays. And we didn't have guys that could get us off the field last year. Last year, when in doubt, go to their weakest corner. All right, that's what they did. They throw it to Rashaan Melvin, it's the first down. It's like, dude, come on, man. The secondary was good early, but then, man, these guys started to kind of show that, hey, maybe they're not starting material. And we replaced Rashaan Melvin with starting cornerbacks. We have three. Oh my gosh, our cornerback group is good. We bring in Deron Harmon, a veteran safety that we haven't had, to help us get off the field. We bring in Jamie Collins to help us get off the field, and then Danny Shelton to help stop the run, which is Matt Patricia's calling card defensively. So the Lions statistically may be closer to a Super Bowl than you would have thought if you would have simply just looked at last year's stats. But hey, if Detroit Lions can follow into 2017 Patriots footsteps, I don't think anybody would be mad with having a trash defense and still winning the Super Bowl. I'm just saying the Lions may be a little bit closer than we think. Now, if you guys want to see a part 2 where I break it down in film and players they brought in, let me know. But today's video is just stats. Thank you, Prop, for watching, and I'm out.